there are no negotiations going on right now, but the problem in Washington is spending, and the president needs to face that problem, and we're going to work on that on the Republican side.
Well, if the president challenged the Republicans to come up with what they have said that they could produce, can you produce that kind of a budget deal that is balanced and that has enough spending cuts, real spending cuts, to balance any tax revenues?
Well, I think we need to look at long-term, and that's why the House has passed the budget. We're still waiting on the Senate to pass the budget after 1,350 days. I mean, you need to have that on the table from the Senate side. You obviously need to have that from the president, who has not told us when he's going to send his budget over. He's going to miss those deadlines. So we got a lot of work to do, but it deals with spending. That's the problem. And I want to avoid a downgrade, but I do agree with the Vice President of the United States says we're not going to default on our debt. That's pretty clear. We have enough payments coming in to the Treasury to pay our interest on the debt, and that's how we avoid the default. But we got to focus on the spending problem, and that's what most of my constituents are talking about.
I want to ask you about the gun control debate, because the president's going to be rolling out new proposals tomorrow, and he is prepared to use executive action in some ways if Congress won't act. Harry Reid has said that until the House votes something on the assault weapon ban that we know is going to be proposed, he's not going to take it up in the Senate. Will the House take this up and do something meaningful on assault weapons and on these magazine clips? Because of Newtown, because the whole country has been rethinking this since Newtown.
Well, it certainly is an incredible tragedy, and I was on the floor of the U.S. House this morning reading the Constitution with former Speaker Nancy Pelosi and many others, and the Second Amendment's part of that is the First Amendment to speak about what we'd like to do and redress our grievances. So we'll look at what the president provides, but it's very troubling to me that the president says if Congress doesn't do what I want, I'm going to issue an executive order. You know, the power to make laws starts in the House and the Senate, and that's where we'll take a look at this. But again, in my district and many others, overwhelmingly people in Kansas are not looking for new laws out of Washington. They're looking for more involvement in their communities and their families at the state level rather than a new Washingtonian law.
Well, as you know, New York State is taking action today, the toughest gun laws in the country. But again, if things are not done at the federal level, guns move across state borders very, very easily. So doesn't there need to be some federal law?
Well, there are obviously plenty of laws, and that's one concern I do have is failure to enforce current laws. Unless we're going to enforce the current laws on the books, and that starts with the administration and starts at the state level as well. I mean, it doesn't make sense to pile more laws on top of it. And the numbers we've seen is a declining law enforcement of our current gun laws, and that starts with the administration, moves on down. And I think Republicans, Democrats can agree on that let's look at the enforcement, see if we're following through on the other laws we pass, because there's this tendency in Washington, let's say, hey, let's pass a new law when the problem is lack of enforcement of current gun laws. I think that should be part of the debate.
Well, of course, the gun law loopholes, which no amount of enforcement would change that unless something is done to actually close those loopholes. Let me play a little bit of what two of the mothers in Newtown from Sandy Hook Elementary who lost their children had to say about this yesterday.
This is a promise to have the conversations on all the issues, conversations where listening is as important as speaking, conversations where even those with the most opposing views can debate in goodwill.
This is a promise to turn the conversation into actions. Things must change. This is the time.
What do you say to those grieving mothers?
Well, same thing. I said to folks in 4 different town halls is let's have the conversation. Let's talk about how we solve the problem. Let's talk about mental health issues. Let's talk about the enforcement of current gun laws. Let's talk about violence glorified by Hollywood and violence in our video machines and all the games our kids play, because we have a violent culture, and that contributes to that. And yes, it's long overdue for a good debate, a good solid debate about what is the solution to the problem. We've got to identify the problem as well. So it's a good time to start. But trying to bypass Congress with an executive order doesn't allow a conversation. It simply continues to put more power in the presidency rather than more power in folks that represent the entire population across the country.
Do you agree with one of your colleagues who's talking about this as a possible impeachable offense and talking about articles of impeachment if the president takes action without Congress?
we'll see what the actions are. Presidents, long before the current president, have used executive orders and have done that in a way that folks have argued might have bypassed the constitutional authority of Congress. It just depends on what he plans on doing. But again, he has it in his power today to step up enforcement against current violations of gun laws, and I would encourage him to do that. I would encourage the Justice Department to present some proposal by which they're going to do that. If they need additional resources to enforce current gun laws, come to us with that proposal in your budget, and hopefully next month they'll have some extra real concrete proposals to step up the enforcement of current gun laws.
Thank you very much, Congressman. Thanks for being with us today.